Hello guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. If you're new here, you're welcome, and if you're a returning subscriber, you're welcome as well. In today's video, we are going to learn how to cut a short pant with a zipper and a side pocket. So if this is something that interests you, kindly watch this video to the end. Make sure you give this video a thumbs up so that YouTube can recommend this video to other viewers. So let's get right into the tutorial. So this is the fabric I'll be using, but I'll be drafting this on the pattern paper so that we can see it very well. So right here is my pattern paper. I'm going to be marking half an inch at the side. Okay, so after marking half an inch, I'll mark the quarter of my hip, which is going to serve as my crouch line. So I normally use the quarter of my hip as my crouch, and it works perfectly. So right here I have 10 inches. If you want ease, you can add half an inch to it if you want. So I'm going to be marking 10.5 inches, so I'll mark it around. So after that, you're going to connect the line. So the next thing I'm going to do now is to mark the quarter of my hip from my crouch up to my waistline. So then you go ahead and connect it together. And the next thing I'll do now is to mark the hip line, which is 8 inches. You also connect it together and mark your crouch measurement, which is usually 3 inches from your crouch line. You also connect that as well, and I'll mark the length of my short plus folding allowance. Okay, you also connect the lines together. So after connecting the lines together, I'm going to label all of this. Okay, now after labeling, in order to get our crouch extension, we need to divide the quarter of our hip divided by 4. Okay, so mine is 2.5, so I'm going to measure that 2.5 right here. Okay, you mark the 2.5 right here. So after marking the 2.5, I'm going to measure about 1 inch at this corner so that I can curve my crouch. Then you curve it like this. So the next thing to do now is to mark what you have here. Okay, you divide it into 2 to create the midpoint. So I'm also going to use that midpoint to create the dart. Okay, you can extend the midpoint up to the length of your trouser. Okay, if you want to shape that lower part, if you want it to be tight, then you need that midpoint at the length of your trouser as well. So I'll just come down by 4 inches. Okay, and then mark the line. You also mark half an inch on both sides of your dart, and then go ahead and connect. So after connecting it together, you need to shape your waist. You add your dart allowance to your waist measurement, and also half an inch joining allowance to the waist. And once you are done doing that, you're going to connect your waist to the hip line. We have already added half an inch to the hip and the thigh. Okay, just connect your waist to your hip. So once that is done, you're going to input your thigh measurements. So I'm also going to use my thigh measurements at the lower part of my trouser. Okay, now if you don't want yours to be big, you can use quarter of your hip or measure the round measurements you have around there and insert it there if you want yours to be tight. But I want mine to be free, so I'll also insert my thigh measurements at the length of my trouser, at the lower part of my trouser. Okay, but if you don't want yours wide, just insert your midpoint so that you can share the measurement on both sides of the midpoint and then connect it together. So after marking it out, I'm going to connect it together and also add half an inch sewing allowance to the side and half an inch sewing allowance to the crouch. So you should have something like this once you are done. So I'll go ahead and cut this out. So after cutting this out, I'm going to reduce what we have at the waist so that we can use it to replace it with a band. So I'll reduce it by 1.5. So I'll replace it with a band and then I'll cut it out. So here is the back. In order to create the back crouch, we are going to divide what we have here into 2. That midpoint we measured, okay, you divide what you have in between the midpoint and around the crouch area, okay, we are going to divide it into 2. I want to make it the midpoint, I want to make it more visible for us to see, okay. So you divide what you have here into 2, and then the crouch extension we have at the front, you mark it upward, which is going to serve as the waist, as a waist measurement for the back, because the back needs to be raised up. All right, because of our butt, the back needs to be raised up. So that extension, you mark it up. That's 2.5. Yours might be more than 2.5. Okay, so I'll mark it up now. So I'm going to connect it together like this. So after connecting it together, you need to extend your waistline at the front. Okay, you extend the waistline and then you measure the overall waist measurement you have at the front, and then you place it here to create the back waist. So I'm just extending the waistline, then you take the waist measurement here in a slanted way like this, then you mark it out. So the next thing you want to do now is here you come down by 1/2 inch from the front crouch, come down by 1/2 inch, okay, then you go out by 1.5 inch. Now at the front crouch, you also go up by 2 inches like this, okay. So here I'm going to mark 1.5. Make sure you don't mark the 1/2 inch sewing allowance at the front with it. You need to mark it before the sewing allowance. So I'm going to mark 1.5 inch here and then mark 1 inch to the rest. Okay, just watch how I'm placing my tape measure. Okay, so now you're going to connect all of these points together. Just watch what I'm doing. You will get it if you watch what I'm doing. So you connect this part to the crouch area too. I'm trying to use my ruler, but eventually use my free hand. So just go ahead and connect all of the points together. So on this side, you are going to be adding 1/2 inch sewing allowance, just as we added it to this side. So the other side too, you add 1 inch sewing allowance. Sorry, you're going to be adding one inch sewing allowance. Make sure you don't add the 1/2 inch sewing allowance at the front while you're measuring that 1 inch allowance. So connect everything together. Okay, so at the back crouch, we are going to be creating the zipper allowance. Since I wanted zipper at the back, if you don't want zipper at the back, you can ignore this. So when you are measuring where your zipper is going to stop, make sure you minus your dart, your band from it. Just watch how I place the tape measure. So I'm going to mark 1 inch for the zipper allowance. Okay, you mark it all the way down, and I'm going to be marking 1/2 inch joining allowance to the rest of the crouch area. Then you connect it together like this. Okay, so I'll go ahead now and cut this out. So to create the back dart, the back dart is going to be 1 inch longer than the front dart. So just measure what you have at the front, then place it at the back. So I've marked what I have at the front, at the back as well. Then you extend the dart leg, measure 1/2 inch on both sides, then connect it together. So this is what we have for the back. So right here we want to create the pocket. Just go in by 2 inches. Actually I went in by 3 inches, but it was too wide for me, so you can use 2 inches, 1.5, and then I came down by 5.5 inch. Then you connect it together. Make sure you don't mark your sewing allowance with it. All right, so here I've connected it together. If you want yours to be curved, you can make it curved. Just place your curve ruler here and curve it if that is what you want, but I want mine to be slanted. So at the hip area, I'm going to measure 7 inches. That is how wide I want my pocket to be. Okay, so you go ahead and cut out what I'm going to use for my pocket. So here is the pocket, and I've cut out 2 of it. So I have 7 inches here and then 12 inches as the length, and that 12 inches is from my waist to the thigh line. Okay, so we are going to place this under the trouser. Okay, I've not added half an inch to my waist measurement, so when I'm placing the pattern, the trouser pattern, I'll place it below the half an inch allowance at the pocket. So you are going to shape the waist from the pocket as well. So after shaping the waist, you're going to remove it. Okay, we are going to remove one of the pocket. You remove one. Okay, then you place the other one back and then cut out that slanted shape I made around here, but you need to add half an inch for joining. Add it there. Okay, so then go ahead and cut it out. So after cutting it out, you should have something like this. Okay, so I'm going to be cutting, use this pattern to cut out the fabric. Then you go ahead and curve the lower part like this, so you should have something like this. So here I've used the pattern to cut out the trouser and also the pockets. So here is the pocket. So I'm going to separate the right pocket and the left pocket from each other. Now you place them right side facing each other. Okay, like this. So I'll go take this to my sewing machine now and then sew it like this. Okay, so here is my trouser. This is the back trouser. I've sewn the crouch, I've sewn it at the crouch, and I left the zipper allowance, I left it open. So I'll go and sew the front as well. So here is the front. I've also taken my dart and I've also sewn the crouch at the front. Okay, so I've sewn my pocket as well. So what you're going to do next now is to take the slanted part of the pocket and the slanted part of the trouser, you match it with each other like this. Okay, so you are going to take this, your pocket, you make it, the slanted part should face the slanted part of the trouser and it should be right side facing each other like this. Okay, so I'll take it to my sewing machine now and then sew it down. So I've sewn it to the trouser, as you can see. So you're going to flip it under. Just watch what I'm doing. You flip it under. I've sewn the other side of the pockets. I've sewn it. So you're going to stitch this part. You stitch it down here. Now on this side as well, you are going to stitch it down. So after doing that, you're going to place the back on the front and then stitch it at the side. Okay, you stitch it at the side. So after stitching it at the side, then you go ahead and stitch it at the crouch area. Okay, so once you are done stitching the crouch area, you then take in the hemming allowance at the lower part of your trouser. So you should have something like this. Okay, so you can see what I did. So the next thing I'm going to do now is to get our band. So I'm just trying to turn it to the wrong side so that you can see what it looks like. I've used my weaving machine to weave all the rough edges. Okay, so the next thing now is to add the band and the zipper. Okay, just measure your round waist and then use it to create the band you have around there. So here is my band. If you are making this for a client, make sure you had your stay on the band, but for the sake of this tutorial, I did not add any stay to it. So I'm just going to fold this into two. There are two ways you can attach your band. Fold it into two and sew it around, or you sew one side of the band first, then the other side of the band you also fold it and flip it over so as to cover the rough edges around there. I hope you understand. So this is the final look of our shorts. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Thank you guys for watching this video to the end. Please consider to like this video, share this video, subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you guys in my next tutorial. Bye.